ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity to present today. Services managed with microarray technology. Clinicians can today categorize breast cancer into 4 intrinsic subtypes, namely luminal A and B, which are characterized by estrogen and/or progesterone receptor positivity, HER2 overexpressing, and basal. A key component of this classification system is HER2 status, which helps to subclassify the luminal patients into A and B, while it's also defining the HER2 overexpressors. The HER2 oncogene is overexpressed in some 25% of patients with breast cancer. Whilst this is associated with poor prognosis, these patients do tend to respond better to anthracycline-based therapies. In addition, the targeted therapy Herceptin has been demonstrated to reduce the risk of recurrence and death by at least 1/3. Accurate assessment of HER2 status is thus essential. Immunohistochemistry and FISH are currently in vogue. These are time-consuming microscopic techniques, and they've been shown to be subject to intra-observer variation of up to 20%. One alternative then may be that of real-time PCR, which has been demonstrated to be fast, cost-effective, and reliable. Now, HER2 is located on chromosome 17 and is flanked by some 40 other genes of what's termed the HER2 Amplicon. Of these other genes, TOP2 has aroused particular interest, as its amplification is postulated to be the actual event predicting response to anthracyclines in breast cancer. Controversy surrounds the rate of amplification of TOP2, however, because whilst it is postulated to be amplified in some 50% of those who are HER2 positive, studies regarding its amplification in HER2 negative patients have returned discordant results. Now, as I said, there's some 40 genes located at the HER2 amplification, and in order to identify which of these are important in breast cancer, we decided to run a whole genome microarray on 20 patients with the condition as a precursor to this study. Along with TOP2, we identified a number of other novel targets, including LASP-1, RPL19, RARA, which is associated with response to retinoic acid and induction of remission in leukemia, and TUG-G1, which has recently been demonstrated to be increased from normal breast tissue through to invasive ductal carcinoma. So the aims of this present work. Firstly, we wanted to better assess the role of real-time PCR in the assessment of HER2 status. In doing so, we wanted to investigate the relationship between amplification levels of TOP2 and those of HER2. Finally, we wanted to elucidate the amplification patterns of the novel genes LASP-1, RPL19, RARA, and TUG-G1. The first phase of our study involved validation of our laboratory techniques, wherein we investigated the relationship between immunohistochemistry and real-time PCR for the assessment of HER2 status. Having done this on 10 patients, we then expanded our study group to a 95-patient cohort. With a mean age of 57 years and the majority being luminal A or B, these generally reflected that seen in the clinic setting, although admittedly we had a higher than normal level of HER2 positives at 49%, given that we were particularly interested in HER2 status. Breast tissue was retrieved at the time of surgery and is now frozen. RNA was isolated using the RNase mini-kit and reverse transcribed using the superscript 3 from the beach kit. Relative gene expression was then determined using the TACMAN assays and the delta CT approach, and statistical analysis was performed using Cubase and SPSS software. And so to our results, and first of our validation study. And as you can see here, amplification levels of HER2 by PCR were significantly higher in those patients who have been classified as HER2 positive using chemistry and FISH. In addition, we noted a strong correlation between the results of PCR for HER2 and those of repeat immunohistochemistry for HER2, which we carried out in the lab as part of the validation process. We also carried out immunohistochemistry on TOP2 as part of this validation process. And interestingly, we noted that 3 of our patients who were HER2 negative were positive for TOP2. This led us to postulate that perhaps TOP2 amplification may be more prevalent than we previously thought in those patients who are HER2 negative, and helps to explain this, where there's no difference in the amplification levels of TOP2 between patients who are classified clinically as HER2 positive or negative. When we expanded out our cohort to a 95-patient group, we again found that amplification levels of HER2 were significantly higher in patients who had been classified clinically as HER2 positive. And in keeping with this, levels are significantly higher in the luminal B and HER2 overexpressing subtypes relative to the luminal A and HER2 and basal groups. Moving on to TOP2, and we noticed that amplification levels of TOP2 correlated strongly with HER2 in both the HER2 negative and HER2 positive cohorts. Once again, however, amplification levels in TOP2 did not differ significantly between patients who had been classified clinically as HER2 positive or negative. When we investigated this further, we were surprised to find some 25% of patients who had been classified clinically as HER2 negative demonstrated high levels of amplification of TOP2. So moving on to our other genes, LASP1 and RPL19 amplification levels are significantly higher in patients who have been classified clinically as HER2 positive. Keeping with this again, levels are higher than luminal B and HER2 overexpressing subtypes relative to the luminal A and basal groups. RARA was demonstrated to be significantly more highly amplified in estrogen receptor positive and HER2 positive patients relative to their negative counterparts, and in keeping with this, levels are lower than basal subgroup relative to the other three subtypes. Finally, in TOP1, the amplification levels did not differ significantly between HER2 positive and negative patients, although amplification levels of TOP1 did correlate strongly with those of TOP2A. So to summarize, this study has demonstrated that real-time PCR correlates strongly with the results of immunohistochemistry in the assessment of HER2 status. We've demonstrated that a relationship does exist between TOP2 and HER2, but this relationship is certainly more complex than previously thought. We've identified relationships between HER2, the intrinsic breast cancer subtypes, and the novel genes LASP1 and RPL19, and we've demonstrated a correlation between RARA and estrogen receptor positivity, whilst also showing that this former is related to HER2 positivity. To conclude, chairpersons, ladies and gentlemen, this study has demonstrated that real-time PCR is an accurate means of assessment of HER2 status, and we postulate that it will soon be adapted to clinical assessment. We've demonstrated that a significant portion of HER2 negative patients, possibly up to 25%, may amplify TOP2, and thus this particular finding was not expected. It's contrary to popular opinion, and raises significant questions as to the best method of assessment of patients for amplification. We have demonstrated, we've identified the previously unheard of therapeutic targets LASP1 and RPL19, although admittedly their amplification patterns follow those of HER2 and may not add anything new to the clinical context. And finally, we've identified RARA as being differentially expressed in breast cancer, and identification of patients who amplify this gene may help to select patients for treatment with hyaluronic acid. Thank you.
I feel beyond more bristly when you said it was clinically applicable. You want to amplify that?
Yeah, good presentation. Why would you suggest that a study that would requires good quality breast tissue for extraction of cDNA for your real-time PCR, rather than immunochemistry-based studies that we can use paraffin? Well, clarify that?
Yeah. First of all, real-time PCR can be used now in paraffin. It has been shown to be applicable in that setting. And the immunochemistry is subject to interoperable variability, as I said. At the moment, when you get a positive, when you get an intermediate result in immunochemistry for HER2 status, you have to move on and do FISH. The cost of FISH and immunochemistry for one patient is €525. For immunochemistry and PCR, it's €135. So there's really the cost benefit.
What's the Euro-Irish economy doing at the moment?
I think better than yours.
The second conclusion there, will those patients not be getting anthracyclines anyway, HER2 negatives? Tell me what cohort of breast cancer patients you don't give anthracyclines to.
This is the point, like, the vast majority of patients are getting anthracyclines at the moment. However, it's been shown that much of the benefit of anthracyclines is limited to patients who are HER2 positive. What we're saying is, it's also been shown that there's a small portion of HER2 negatives who do benefit, a small portion of patients who are luminal A or basal do benefit from anthracyclines. And we think the TOP2A is possibly the reason for this amplification.
All medical oncologists give them anthracyclines anyway.
I know we're not suggesting that everyone should get anthracyclines. What we're trying to do is identify which patients should, given the toxicities that are associated.
Professor Alderson.
You threw in retinoic acid. Why?
You didn't understand.
Didn't tell me anything about RARA and retinoic acid.
During my study, I mentioned that RARA has been associated with induction of remission in leukemia and following treatment with derivatives of retinoic acid.
Does that answer your question?
Still a bit lost.
Would you like to explain to a seminar later? There's a question over here. Okay. Last question.
Genes amplified usually is a copy of the gene. picked up by fish or ACTH. You're denoting amplification, which is really raised expression. The question I have is, whether you looked at expression levels either by PCR or immunohistochemistry and related that to your fish or copy number variants?
We haven't done fish. We've simply related the immunohistochemistry to real-time PCR. So that would be the first.
Neither of which then denotes an amplified gain, but just increased expression.
Admitted that's true, but the 5 studies that looked at the significance of top 2 when it comes to response to anthracyclines, and they have all 4 of them have looked at messenger RNA gains, so we're just following on.
Well done, you survived.